Everything was fine in a police station until a little boy arrived shouting,
"Please arrest my father."
What nobody knew was that the secret behind that sentence would shock everyone to the core. On a hot Tuesday morning, tranquility settled in the police station in the small town of St. John. The fans rotated slowly, trying to alleviate the heat, while the police officers had their coffee and reviewed some reports. It was a typical quiet morning for the town. But the stillness was broken when the doors of the police station swung wide, and the figure of a little boy with dark hair and frightened eyes stood out as he ran into the police station. His eyes, swollen from crying, searched the room as if looking for something or someone. He was Henry, a 6-year-old boy, small for his age and clearly terrified. Without hesitation, the little boy made his way to the reception desk, his tiny feet tapping against the ceramic floor. His little hands gripped the counter tightly as he tried to get the attention of any adult who could help him.
"Please arrest my father."
His trembling, desperate voice echoed through the room, attracting everyone's attention. The policemen, initially disconcerted, exchanged looks of bewilderment. Some put down their coffee cups, others put their papers aside. The statement had caused an immediate stir. He looked at the policeman and repeated, his voice full of anguish,
"Please arrest him. He can't stay free."
Officer Mary, a young policewoman with a gentle gaze, came running. The woman, hearing the boy's cries from her office, came to intervene. With a motherly look on her face, she picked Henry up and took him to a nearby bench.
Calm down, calm down. Come here, sit down.
The officer crouched down to his eye level, trying to convey some comfort.
It's all right now, little one. You're safe here.
She said softly, running her hands through his hair, trying to calm him down. Henry had his little heart beating fast, his shoulders were shaking, and tears were starting to stream down his face. The policewoman continued talking to him.
What happened, darling? There's no need to cry. You're safe now. Do you want to tell me what happened?
Her words, although tender, didn't seem to reach the frightened little boy. He clung to Mary's shirt, his eyes still wide and teary. The hall of the police station was now filled with a mixture of confusion and concern. Every policeman was exchanging worried glances and muttering, "What has that boy's father done?" However, it was clear that Henny's words carried an unsustainable weight for someone of his age. Officer Mary, still kneeling next to the boy, tried to ask one more time.
Come on, darling,
she said, trying to dry the tears on his face.
Take a deep breath.
Sergeant Paul, a big man with gray hair and a neatly trimmed mustache, stood up from his desk. His gaze was firm but also carried a touch of concern. He walked slowly over to the two of them, trying to understand the situation.
Good morning, young man. What are you doing here all alone? Why did you come here?
The little boy's breathing was heavy, interspersed with sobs that made his anguish evident. Even surrounded by protectors, he seemed to feel vulnerable and frightened. Little by little, more police officers, curious and worried, began to crowd around the boy, forming a semicircle. The sergeant, despite his imposing posture, showed genuine concern and asked,
Come on, buddy, you can tell us what happened.
Henry tried to answer, but his words came out garbled and confused.
He needs to be arrested. He's going to be angry. I want him to go to jail, please,
begged the boy, which increased the sense of fear in everyone present. The police officer and the sergeant, seeing that all the agents were curious and crowding around, worried about scaring the little one, decided to take him to the interrogation room.
Come on, sweetheart,
said the woman, lifting him up cautiously.
Let's go inside and have a chat. Let's go.
The boy calmed down when he sat down on the chair in the interrogation room, and the policewoman asked again,
What did your father do, Henry? Did your father hurt you or do anything bad?
Mary asked, trying to extract some concrete information from the little boy. His face contorted into an expression of frustration. It was clear that he wanted to tell something, but the words seemed to escape him.
Daddy gets angry sometimes.
His voice disappeared at the end of the sentence, leaving a trail of uncertainty and speculation in the air.
What do you mean, son?
The man asked. The tension that followed was palpable. The policemen's minds began to race, trying to fit the pieces of this dark puzzle together. They imagined the worst possible scenarios. Had it been domestic violence or verbal abuse? What could be so terrible as to make a child seek refuge in the police station, and beg for his father's arrest. The sergeant leaned over, noticing the sad look on the boy's face as he spoke of his father, and placing himself at the child's eye level, he said,
"We'll help you, Henry.
He said softly.
But I need you to try and tell us with more details, all right?
Henry slowly agreed, still fighting back the tears.
Come on, I'll ask you a few questions and you just answer yes or no, okay?
Paul suggested.
Yeah.
Is your father home now? How did you get out of the house?
The man asked. The boy replied, drying his tears.
Well, Daddy's asleep. I unlocked the door and ran here.
The sergeant and the policewoman concentrated on better understanding Henry's confused narrative. The woman, with her motherly tone of voice, asked,
Is your father very aggressive, Henry? Does he hit you?
The little boy's answer took a while, as if he was thinking about what to say.
Yes, I've been hit a few times.
He exclaimed, his eyes wide and his breathing fast. The officer's reaction was almost instantaneous, and it only made the tension even worse. They asked where the boy lived, and even though he didn't know the address, the directions he gave were enough for the officers to know where it was. The boy and his father didn't live too far, near the sewer, so it wasn't difficult to identify the house. And when the sergeant asked about the boy's mother, and he said he hadn't seen her for a long time, everyone there was petrified when they heard these words.
Dad said she went for a walk, but she never came back.
As the situation became clearer and clearer, as they were coming to the conclusion that it was some kind of family violence, as well as being very strange for a man to raise a boy without his mother and still say that she had gone for a walk, the police station became a turmoil of activity. The officer moved frantically, coordinating their efforts and preparing to act. A team was immediately deployed to Henry's house, prepared to face the worst. The sergeant immediately got on the radio and communicated with the car that was on its way to Henry's house.
Attention unit, we have a 273, 5R.
Code for domestic violence report.
Don't let the man escape, proceed with caution.
Henry continued, his voice still shaky.
Every night he gets angry. He says he can't take it anymore.
The police exchanged worried glances, trying to decipher what the boy was really trying to communicate. The sergeant asked,
What is that your father can't take anymore, kid?
The boy's eyes welled up with tears.
He slammed the fridge door. I got scared. He screamed and I ran to my room.
Those present had already understood everything. The poor little boy was the victim of a violent man who needed to be detained, and they all waited for the criminal to arrive at the police station. Meanwhile, at the boy's home, his father, Roger, was resting deeply. The man was asleep in his room when he was woken up by the sound of police cars pulling up right in front of his house. The place was deplorable. The police were horrified. The wooden house was crumbling down, with a few spiderwebs here and there and with bushes growing all around the house that were scary just to look at. They didn't even wait and burst through the front door shouting,
Police, come out with your hands up!
Roger didn't even have time to argue, and the policemen started handcuffing him and leading him to the car.
What's going on? Why am I being arrested?
He shouted, confused.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights? We're taking you to the police station,
one of the policemen said. At that moment, the man got scared.
What? The police station? No, I didn't do anything. Let me go. I have a kid at home. Let me go.
The officers restrained him again and said roughly,
Your son Henry is at the police station. You're done, buddy. Come on, get in the car.
And pushed Roger into the vehicle. At that moment, he was shocked.
What is my son doing there? Tell me.
And he began to panic. The policeman told him to keep quiet and drove off. Roger felt his heart racing and worry invaded his chest. Back at the police station, the roar of the car's engine announced the team's return from Henry's house. The atmosphere was charged with tension, with all the officers anxiously awaiting news of the situation. When the door opened, what they saw was not what they expected. In fact, the disheveled figure of a thin man emerged from the car with pale skin, deep, tired eyes, and muscles almost atrophied by his apparent state of malnutrition. His clothes were worn and dirty, revealing the harsh reality of the life he faced. The man's image contrasted brutally with the allegation that he could have inflicted physical harm on his son.
How could that man have the strength to hit the boy?
People asked quietly. Roger, still handcuffed, looked confused and desperate.
What's going on? Why am I here?
He kept asking, his voice shaking with uncertainty and fear. When his eyes finally met Henry's, a wave of relief and more concern washed over him, and the boy, seeing his father in this state, didn't hesitate. He did something that no one there was expecting. He ran across the room and threw himself into his father's arms.
Daddy!
The boy shouted, his eyes wet. The hug that followed was full of emotion, and the man's eyes also filled with tears. The scene in front of the officers was disconcerting,
I thought he was abusing the boy.
said the sergeant, approaching Officer Mary incredulous. The father, still trying to process the situation, asked,
What? Abuse? What are you talking about? Why am I here handcuffed, and what is my son doing in this police station?
Everyone looked at each other, searching for words. It was then that the little boy's thin, innocent voice cut through the silence in the room.
I'm the one who had you arrested, Daddy.
He said, looking at Roger full of hope.
What? You had me arrested, but why? What did I do?
The man asked, his heart pounding nonstop. The bewilderment on the man's face was evident. He looked at his son, then at the police officers, trying to connect the dots. The police station, which had previously been filled with tension and confusion, was now filled with silence. The father, still unable to understand why he was handcuffed and why his son had done what he had done, spoke once again, his eyes swollen with worry and sadness.
Henry, son, what do you mean I had you arrested? Why would you do that?
The little boy swallowed, fighting the knot in his throat. He raised his little face to the man and, full of emotion, wanting to cry, in an almost inaudible whisper, he said,
I just wanted you to eat, Daddy.
The simple confession dropped like a bomb in the room. Everyone stared at the scene without understanding a thing. He continued, his voice shaking.
I saw it on TV today, Dad. They said that in prison people get food 3 times a day.
The tears now flowing freely down the boy's face.
I remember that night. I heard you crying. You were in the kitchen and the fridge was open. You were so sad, asking why there was no food. You banged on the fridge and screamed.
No one in the room uttered a peep. They were stunned by the revelation. In the face of everything, Roger explained what was going on, clearing everyone's doubts. What the hell happened? It turned out to be a sacrifice by a father who prioritized feeding his son, even though he was starving. It was a testament to his unwavering love for his son. Roger raised the boy alone since his wife died. He would tell the little boy, afraid of hurting him with the truth, that his mother had gone for a walk, but he couldn't imagine that this would make the boy think that she would come back one day. He also had serious financial difficulties because he had no schooling, and at that point, he hadn't had a job for months. He bought enough food for one and gave it all to his son. The man was barely eating and was becoming malnourished, something the little boy could see all too well. But there were nights, after Henry had gone to bed, when despair hit the poor father hard. One of these nights, looking at the empty fridge, he let his frustration show and banged hard on the fridge door, shouting the words,
Why? Why is there no food? Why can't I feed us?
The little one was awake and saw the scene, which scared him and made him run back to his room. But he knew that his father was starving, and although he was very young, he felt the man's pain when there was no food left. That day, the little boy woke up and went to watch his cartoon on TV. But there was still a local newspaper on, where the news about the situation in the prisons was being broadcast. From it, the little boy only absorbed the information. Prisoners receive meals 3 times a day. And that's why he ran to the police station to have the man arrested. Henry's naivety, thinking that the solution to their problem would be to arrest his father so that he could have regular meals, was heartbreaking. With tears streaming down his thin face, Roger pulled his son into a tight embrace, holding him gently.
Oh, my little boy, my son, I'm so sorry you had to go through this.
The policemen, many of whom were fathers, felt a knot in their own stomachs. The situation before them was a painful reminder of the difficulties faced by many families, especially in challenging economic times. And what had begun as an investigation into allegations of domestic violence became a stark reflection of the reality of many people living on the margins of society. The two were released, of course, and returned home with their hearts pounding with love for each other. But the next day, they were both in for a surprise they never thought they would receive. They were both woken up by insistent knocks on the door. When they opened it, they were confronted with a surprising sight. Several members of the community, along with the police officers from the police station, were there.
I heard that someone here could use a little help.
Said Mary, with a warm smile on her face. And before Roger could recover from his shock, the sergeant continued.
And by the way, we're in need of a janitor at the police station. Would you be interested?
Tears welled up in the man's eyes. He was so used to fighting alone that the generosity of these people took him by surprise.
I don't know what to say. Yes, I accept. Thank you very much.
The little boy came running when he saw the toys and shouted,
Look, Daddy, look how many toys.
Yes, big boy, and they're all yours.
he said, wiping away his tears and seeing the joy on the little one's face. It was a very happy and memorable day. The following week, the police station, which had previously been a place Roger would never have thought of entering, would now be his place of work, his refuge, and a symbol of a new phase in his life. As the days passed, the story of the little boy who had his father arrested spread throughout the city, inspiring the community to come together and help those in need. Groups of volunteers began organizing donation fairs and assistance programs, ensuring that no family went hungry or in need. And so, the simple, naive act of a boy, motivated by love for his father, transformed an entire town. He taught everyone an invaluable lesson. In the midst of adversity, kindness and empathy can flourish, and sincere actions can have unimaginable repercussions. If you liked the story, surely the next video that's appearing on your screen will move you too. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our next videos. A huge kiss, and see you in the next story.